looking, kind of always looking at the pollinator aspect, and are doing so for this project as well. It could actually work well in this project because we have to raise the array up a bit to clear the floodplain elevations. So which would open it up to, you know, species that could grow longer potentially and not shade the array. So I guess I would ask that you know, we be allowed to pursue that option, but also be allowed to, if we're not finding that it's suitable, to use a mix that we've used successfully on a number of other.
So that's coming back to us again, because what you say is herbicides will be used in the first 2 to 3 years of the project to aid in weed removal and to help establish a new ground cover.
But you're saying on a limited use only.
Right. What we're trying to do is get rid of all the weeds and invasives. Once the fescue takes over, it kind of takes care of itself and really kind of starts to choke out things that we would use herbicide to get rid of. So insofar as we are using limited herbicides, it usually is during that few-year period. That said, you know, we're also not against restrictions of herbicide. We've seen it elsewhere. But it does aid in the elimination of those type of invasives and things that we're trying to get rid of to get the ground cover to reestablish. Questions?
All right, I'll continue to read number 5, where we were. Alternatively, the inclusion of farm animals might allow for the continuation of agricultural assessment. Small, free-range animals such as chickens may be raised. You don't plan on having chickens.
This is not something we plan on doing. This is it's very new in the industry. There are some solar farms that
But
kind of
there's
have
also sheep.
this going as a pilot program. I'm aware of some. It's not something that's kind of fully blessed by investors and long-term owner-operators yet. We're actually going to be looking into it on some projects that we own and operate, just as a sort of a pilot sort of thing to test it out. But it's not something I would propose it on this project at this time, to use sheep or chickens or any farm animals.
Well, they just said sheep and chickens. But you don't want any farm animals.
No, I mean, it's an alternative to using mowers, but even in the
goat, right?
But even in the first few years, we're talking about only mowing 3 to 4 times, and then it's going to drop to 2 to 3 times, and then 1 to 2 times once that fescue gets established. So, yeah, we don't see the benefit yet of bringing the sheep in, especially since it's somewhat untested.
All right, and the last suggestion, this office, meaning the Orange County Planning Board, suggests employing a wildlife-friendly fence. Raising a fence 1 foot off the ground will allow wildlife to cross the large site and avoid crowding them into neighboring parcels. Without such consideration, the wildlife will be forced to disproportionately occupy the surrounding properties. The applicant could also realize substantial savings by installing a 6 foot tall fence, as it will stand 7 feet off the ground. We remind the applicant that often fencing can be more unsightly than the actual solar array. Tall fencing is typically viewed as unattractive by adjacent neighbors. A screening plan should be presented during the approval process. Appropriate vegetation all year round screening is more essential, since this will hide the system from potential threats while providing a natural and pleasant landscape for the neighboring parcels. You're good with it?
comment on that,
Sure.
if you like. We've heard that suggestion on other projects, we've seen projects implemented, I've had projects in terms of raising the fence. We've also had projects where we purposefully did not do that to prevent wildlife from getting in, and potentially getting hit by a mower because they're trapped in there. We have no preference either way. We think that we could implement such a fence, 6-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch gap at the bottom. But given the nature of this property, there's plenty of surrounding woodland area, field area. So it's not, to the point of kind of sequestering them over here or there on somebody else's property or something. I don't know if that, kind of holds true for this property. But if this is something that the board feels is important, then we would certainly see what we can do to consider it. But we would take your, take the cues there. In terms of the fence look, and visibility, again, the site is, you can't see the site, and nonetheless, we have proposed the agricultural style fencing, which we think works well in rural type settings where a lot of these solar farms go.
Any questions? You good? Ready to go? Okay. Read this whole thing?
It's a long
piece of paper.
No, you can shorten it up.
Okay. You good? Whereas an application was previously made to the Village of Washingtonville Board of Trustees by Washingtonville Solar LLC, hereafter applicant for the site plan approval in relation to the installation and operation of a solar farm on the premise designated by the tax map identification information given above. Tax map 119-1-1.1 and 121-1-1.1. The street is New York State Route 208. And more particularly set forth on the site plan that was prepared by the applicant and submitted to the Board of Trustees in connection with this matter. And whereas the applicant proposes the installation of the solar energy array and related equipment on the site. Whereas the site is presented unimproved vacant land, which consists of 153 acres, of which 20+ acres will be devoted to the solar farm use, and the site was previously used as farmland, which is no longer ongoing. Whereas the applicant seeks the site plan approval for electric generated use, which use is permitted under Local Law 2 of 2018, subject to site plan approval by the Board of Trustees, and subject to other requirements and restrictions of applicable law, including the posting of financial security bonding and removal of restoration agreement. Whereas the proposed solar farm is designed and to be constructed as a freestanding or ground-mounted solar farm using solar arrays for the generation of electricity, which electricity will be transmitted to utility electric lines running within the utility right-of-way pursuant in front of the site and along the existing public road. Whereas the proposed solar farm will generate electricity via other means and will not use batteries or other means to store electric energy. And whereas the Board of Trustees conducted an environmental review, which included environmental assessment review under the SEQA. And whereas the Board of Trustees classified the proposed action as a type 1 for SEQA review and has adopted a motion for it to serve as the lead agency for SEQA review, and notice of intent was mailed to all designated involved and interested agencies. And whereas no other agency challenged the Board of Trustees' intent to serve as the lead agency for SEQA review, and the Board of Trustees designated itself as lead agency for SEQA review. And whereas a duly noticed public hearing was held on July 25th, 2018, which hearing was duly noted in the village official newspapers. Whereas after reviewing parts 2 and 3 of the long form EAF, and the Board of Trustees intends to adopt the secret negative declaration, long EAF Part 3, determining that there will be no significant environmental impacts of the proposed use. Whereas the Board of Trustees took into consideration the public health, safety, and general welfare, and the comfort of convenience of the public in general and the residents of the immediate neighborhood in particular. And whereas the Board of Trustees required an applicant has agreed to provide conditions and safeguards as shown on the latest revised site plan. And whereas procedure requirements and provisions of the village of Washingtonville zoning law related to the review and the approval of site plans have been followed and met. Whereas the Board of Trustees required the applicant to incorporate safeguards, which we just went over, conditions to further the intent of zoning regulations, including mitigation measures set forth in the aforementioned negative declaration. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees find the applicant has submitted all applicable materials and met all applicable requirements as set forth in the zoning code and the regulations of the Village of Washingtonville, and hereby grant site plan approval to the applicant for the construction and operation of the solar farm as shown on the site plan identified and referred to herein, which approval is subject to the conditions set forth in this resolution on the site plan and imposed by applicable law. The Board of Trustees finds that the site plan submitted for applicant conforms with the requirements set forth in the applicable provisions of the village code, subject to making modifications noted herein, and therefore issues within the site plan approval. Number 2, as a condition of the written approval, the applicant agreed to modify the site plan to incorporate and/or address all concerns of the village engineer and a revised site plan to be submitted by the applicant to the village engineer for review, comment, and approval. No building permit shall issue the applicant until the village engineer certifies that the site plan has been revised to address the concerns, comments and concerns of the village engineer. We still up?
No, keep going, go to the end.
Okay. Just want to make sure if we're still up. Anybody taking notes?
I am.
What did you say on the second page?
I'll get back to that. Okay. Now for be it resolved on a motion by.
I'll make a motion.
Trustee Kalor, seconded by trustee Deputy Mayor Lang. Carried out by, let's have a roll call. Trustee Kalor,
Yes.
trustee Mack,
Yes.
trustee Deputy Mayor Lang.
Yes.
Vote carried 4-0. The Village of Washingtonville Board of Trustees finds the applicant has submitted all applicable materials, met all applicable requirements, and set forth by the village code, including the provisions therein relating to zoning, and hereby grants conditional site plan approval, subject to the conditions. Okay. So today is
Thank you.
November 5th.
If I may, I don't want to speak out of turn
Are
without.
you changing your mind now?
No.
You which one?
I don't wanna
Because I'll go back to page 4.
Wait, was that vote complete before I speak up? So without Will here, I don't want to step on his toes, but I thought it would also be prudent to actually carry a vote on the seeker negative declaration is usually how I see it happen at other meetings. So you would vote to, declare a
Terry's
negative
not
declaration under
Negative.
seeker.
Terry's not okay.
Terry's nodding, okay?
Yeah, that's usually the way it's done, yeah.
Just as belts and suspenders, that resolution may cover it, so if you're granting to approve that, or voting to approve that resolution, perhaps it's covered, again, without talking to Will, I'm not really sure. I think you could easily cover your bases by voting to approve neg deck under seeker.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Trustee Claude makes a motion to declare negative secret. Second?
Sorry.
Second. Roll call, trustee Claude,
Yes.
trustee Mack,
Yes.
deputy mayor
Yes.
Lane. 4-0. So I'll have to go back to page 4, because I will. Okay. And Rich, I'll read you 4 later.
Text it to me.
I will. I didn't think this would take so long to get through. Not your project rereadings. But we're good.
Well, it's been a pleasure working with you. Before we move on, if I could just bring up a couple other items, just to kind of prepare